Good Wednesday to you, Spartans. Welcome back. Happy Wednesday, April 3rd. Pretty short and sweet day today. Just need to run through some of the ideas that you guys had down on your note sheet for the conflict theory regarding COVID-19. And then you guys are off finishing up the chapter 1 reading on questions 11 through 15. Be reminded the chapter 1 reading guide is due in its entirety Friday this week, April 5th. And this note sheet that we've been filling out with examples regarding COVID-19 is going to be due next Monday, April 8th. So just keep those dates in the old noodle upstairs. I did peruse some of your work that you guys were doing prior to break. I looked at what was done for those that did it earlier this week. A lot of these examples are relatively accurate. They may not seem like they're accurate, but they are. We're not going to have the same things down here, and we're not going to have, we're just not going to have the exact same ideas. However, one thing I do want to point out when it comes to this note sheet, so we can kind of tailor things in and kind of keep us on the same page. Again, keep your analysis focused on the changes in school. Let's not get into the workplace, home life. Let's keep it focused on school. In that way, I can get a better understanding or better sense of whether or not you understand what's going on. So earlier in the week, before break, you guys read about conflict theory, and then on Monday you were supposed to fill out this note sheet with some examples. And I kind of want to go through them with you, so I would make sure you have this sheet in front of you so you can look through yours and see what you got down and make an executive decision of whether or not it's going to fit here and work. When we're looking at the change in society from a conflict perspective, again, that always begins with power. And I think the example I gave earlier was parents and students are upset with what was going on in their public schools. They're upset with their school district. But just to give you an idea of how much variety we could have in our answers here, we also could have said that there was a power conflict between public schools and charter schools, or public schools and private schools, or in-person schools and online schools. And it still would have fit the same. It still would have fit the same concept of sociology: power, group A imposing its will over group B. But with that being said, let's go on with the conflict here. So, depending on what groups you picked, right? Was it parents and students versus school officials? Is it students versus parents? Is it students versus teachers? Is it let's see, what could it be? It could be popular kids versus the more quiet, left out kids. I mean, all of this would have worked. But whoever you picked for your group A and your group B, that should be mentioned in your social structure change. Whoever was group B and whoever was group A, you should have some sort of comment about how those groups get closer together or even out or balance out in the power structure, or maybe one drops down the power structure and one moves up. But whatever groups you talked about, whoever your power group was and your weak group was for power, they should be mentioned here again in the social structure. And we go down to social action. Okay, again, depending on who your groups were, this is going to also go into behavior. Again, if it's parents and students versus school administrators or teachers, social action is the parents and teachers demand more, or maybe perhaps they expect more freedom or choice or input. Perhaps for the teachers or parents, or teachers, administrators, or school staff, they have more expectations to complete. They have more accommodations to provide. Or perhaps you have something down there socialized for social action. If you did public school versus charter school, perhaps you have something down there that charter schools or online schools are more normalized. They're less taboo. Again, could really be anything. But if your group A and group B are students and teachers, or parents and teachers, Again, we should see a commonality between the rest of these groups. For social structure, those groups are going to reposition the power structure. Make sure your social action then refers to what those specifically what those groups were. Functional integration, again, we're going to see a change in schools. We can continue on with the schools change from in-person to online. You could have put in there for functional integration. Oh, what else could we have done? School became even more technologically based. Our students were allowed greater input into their education. And then culture. Again, if you started out your conflict with parents and students versus school administrators, the culture then would have been, parents and students, families, they enjoy having more input. It could also be that teachers don't like the fact that students have so many choices or so many options or so much input or so many avenues in which to give input. Again, it really all depends on where you started with this. If you're doing students and parents versus schools or families versus schools, that's gonna have a change here. Right? It's gonna kind of change what you're writing down. As long as your social structure talks about these two groups and the social action will talk about these two groups, the rest of these are pretty well straightforward. All right. You could leave it very simply as schools change to online, or there are more choices. Or I think one thing that's going on here at Simley, in addition to the online school, is it seems like you guys are here even less during the day. You have more and more opportunity to leave the building and either stay at home or come back. And culture, again, already talked about, but as long as your squares line up with or mention the two power groups that you're talking about, you're going to be all set. Friday, we're going to look at symbolic interactionism. And I gotta tell some stories here, some embarrassing stories about my colleagues, some of the teachers that you had. It's kind of funny, entertaining. Hopefully I'll help you understand symbolic interactionism, but this one's probably the most difficult one to do. So you've got 11 through 15 for Friday. Remember, the reading guide is due Friday. Then we'll talk about symbolic interactions on Friday, and we'll do this last little rundown exercise from the symbolic perspective, and we'll see what we get. This document, again, due on Monday next week. If you have any questions, shoot me an email if you cannot make the Zoom, which again are Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 9:30 to 10:15. Hope you're all doing well. We'll talk soon. Go Spartans.